Are we live? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dynamic English Live here on our YouTube channel. A very happy Thursday afternoon to all of you. Happy December. Hope everyone is doing well. So, as you can see from our title on the class today, today we're going to be talking about how to use could, should, and would. All right. So we're going to be talking about some pronunciation tips, how we use them, when we don't use them, things like that. So thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. So if I look down, it's because my monitor is there and the camera is here. So I need to be able to see your comments. If you have questions or comments, please ask, and I can see them right down here to maybe help you with any confusion that you might have. So let's go ahead and get started if we can. Franco, let's go with our first slide. So as I said, today's class is all about how to use should, would, and could. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the pronunciation of these three words. All right. I know that should, like let's say if we put an ER on the end of that, then that would be the word shoulder. However, without that ER, it's pronounced completely different. All right. And the big pronunciation tip that I want to focus on with these three words is that the L that you see in those words is silent. So the pronunciation is not should, cooled, or wooled. Okay? That's a very common mistake that I often hear with people who are beginning to learn English. So again, repeat after me. The proper pronunciation of these three words is should, would, and could. We're going to focus more on that second one and the pronunciation a little later. All right, so let's get started with our first verb, which will be the verb should. All right. Now, with any of these verbs, and I have to say these are all modal verbs. Okay, so one thing that we need to remember is that with modal verbs, we do not conjugate. All right, so there's no conjugation. So it's the same for I, you, we, they. Okay, I should, he should, you should, we should, they should. We don't need to change our verb termination whenever we change the pronoun. All right, so when do we use should? Should is basically when we want to give advice, when we want to make a recommendation. So you see here, it says use to say what is the best thing to do or to give advice. Okay? That's our most common use of should. All right. Now, I should save my money. Yeah, I should. You shouldn't drink and drive. And I think you should get a better job. All of those are true. Now, notice there, that second example has a negative, and that's shouldn't. We're going to talk about those in just a little bit. But the main idea of the verb, the modal verb should, is to give advice or a recommendation. All right. Now, on the other hand, if you want to ask a question, you can also use should if you have a doubt. Like, should I take a vacation or no? Okay. So whenever we're asking ourselves a question, we're also going to use the modal verb should. All right. So if there's any questions about should, I would like to answer those maybe before we continue to the next modal verb. Yeah. And obviously, even if you don't have a question, you can also just leave a comment because we can see them all here on our YouTube channel. So if you do have a comment or maybe a phrase that you don't understand with should, then I would love to be able to answer them. and maybe help you with any confusion that you might have. So like I say, should is mostly used for recommendations or a suggestion, or whenever we're questioning ourselves if we need to do something, okay? And so while I'm waiting on your questions, I want to point out the word if, okay? We're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment about if, but I keep saying the term modal verbs. Modal verbs, should, would, could. Those are modal verbs, okay? They're a special verb. They're not conjugated. They're the same for everyone. However, don't be confused if sometimes you hear the term conditional verb, okay? Because a conditional verb is the same thing as a modal verb, except we use the word if in combination with our modal verb, all right? So as a conditional, I'll give you an example. If I win $1 million, I should donate some money to charity, okay? It's the right thing to do, yeah? Now, I'm not obligated, but it's probably recommended, yeah? Now, I know if I win $1 million, so we're talking about hypotheticals, then a lot of my friends would say I should give them money, right? That would be their advice. Okay, but notice that only because I'm using the word if, it becomes a conditional. But really, don't confuse the two. Modal verbs, conditional verbs, same thing. All right, so I don't see any questions about should, so let's move on to could. Now, could is a little more complex. So as we can see here on our graphic, could is used to talk about an ability in the past. That's very important. And a possibility in the future. Again, very important. Or to make polite requests. So you're going to notice here that we have 3 different uses of the modal verb could. So let's talk about that first one. It's used to talk about an ability in the past. So that's something that we were capable of doing maybe when we were children, but now, no. So for example, when I was a child, I could run very far. Now, no, I can't. I can't run as far as I could when I was a child, all right? So when we use that verb could, we're saying I had the ability to then. But pay attention because it's always going to be related to context, all right? So an ability in the past. Maybe for some of us, most of us, I think, in university, we could drink all weekend and no hangover. Now, it's not possible. That ability stayed in the past. We can't do that now. All right, second, we have a possibility in the future. Here again, we have the conditional. This is going to be using if. So again, if I win $1 million, I could travel the world, right? Saying it's a possibility. But again, notice it's used in a hypothetical sense with our word if. We don't know. All right, and thirdly, we have polite requests. This becomes very important, especially if you're traveling to a country that is predominantly English speaking. You will need to understand how we use this for checking into a hotel, a restaurant, or just asking for general directions and being polite, okay? So there's a very big difference in saying, tell me where the train station is, and could you tell me where the train station is? It's a big difference, and I promise you the response that you receive from the person you are asking will be much different if you are able to correctly use the modal verb could. So let's practice with some questions here. Could you tell me your favorite thing on the menu, right? Could you tell me where the bathroom is? Very common question. Could you tell me where is the swimming pool? Maybe you're staying in a big hotel and you get lost. So any of those questions that start with could are going to be more polite and a little more formal, and you're going to get a lot more respect from the person you're asking. All right, so let's take a look at some of those examples there. You're going to see I tried to open the window, but I couldn't do it. Again, we're seeing that contraction there and that negative, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And here we see on that second example, like I said, it's a hypothetical. So that sentence is starting with that all-important word, if. If I won $1 million, I could stop working. So you notice in that sentence we have two modal verbs, and we're using could to say it's possible. All right. So if I won $1 million, I could stop working. All right, and then you see that polite request there. Could you get me a drink, please? So again, anytime you're staying at a hotel, you're on an airplane, anytime in a restaurant, it's always nice to start your questions with could. All right, let's move on to our last slide here. And let's talk about would. All right, Franco, if you can go off, come back to me. I want to point out, before we show that, okay, sorry guys, it's a little warm in the studio. I want to point out that this is a big thing with a lot of people, in that the pronunciation of this word is a little complicated for some Spanish speakers who are learning English. So I want to talk about the pronunciation of this and where we're going to position our mouth when we pronounce this word. So repeat after me. Would, would, would. Okay? There are many people who say the word good, good, as in buena, bueno, right? However, the g sound is not correct with this word. We need to use the word would. So the sound that we can make is similar to hueso, waso, wawa. So if you notice how your lips are going to move, wah, wah, wah. I know that might seem a little bit strange, but if you're one of those people that is saying the word good, but hearing the word would, then pay attention. All right, so just a quick pronunciation lesson there. We can go back out to the big slide there. So we can see that word. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, that L is silent in all of these words. So in this, it's pronounced just like we would pronounce the word madera in English, which is wood. All right, and would is basically used to make polite requests or to talk about an imagined situation. So again, two kind of different examples here. Would, when we're saying a polite request. Polite request, again, if we're staying in a hotel, a restaurant, maybe a cruise ship, anything like that, it's very common that the employees, if they are offering something, are going to use the word would. Would you like a towel? Would you like a dessert? Would you like something to drink? Okay, it's a very, very formal and polite way to ask if someone wants something. Okay, if your response is yes, then you can tell your waiter or you can tell the concierge, I would like this item, right? I would like to do this activity maybe. So anything like that, it's very polite, it's very formal. So if you are planning on traveling for this upcoming summer season here in South America, if you are traveling to Disney or to New York or to any place like that where English is going to be your main language, I would recommend that you definitely understand how we're using could and would, because those polite requests, they go a little bit farther than just telling someone what to do, okay? So The second one is, again, it says about imagined situations. Okay, so again, this is going to go back to that conditional, and we're going to use if. If I had $1 million, I would travel the world. But see, that's imagined because I don't have $1 million. So I'm not traveling the world. Okay, it's a hypothetical imagined situation. All right, let's go back and take a look at some of those examples there. So again, we have that polite request. Do you have an example there? Would you pass me the pen, please? Okay, and in this case, it's a pen, but this is a very common question. If you're ever on a cruise ship and you have the group dining, well, you would probably need to say, would you pass me the salt, please? Would you pass me the pepper? So it's a very respectful and formal way to ask for something. You can't just say, hey, the salt. No, that's not good. So pay attention to how we phrase those questions. Okay. Next, you have, I would like to visit Japan. I would like. That's actually true. I would like to visit Japan. However, Japan is expensive, and I don't have $1 million, remember? So probably not going to Japan anytime soon. And then next you have that hypothetical situation, if. Okay, so pay attention, guys. That if is all important because when you see that word and then it's followed by a modal verb, we know that this situation is not real. It's a hypothetical. So pay attention to context. So if it says, if I won $1 million, I would buy a Ferrari. No, I would not buy a car with $1 million. No. Okay, so I do see a question here. So both could and would are used for polite requests. Yes. Now, normally could, and I'm just going to put out, could is used whenever you are requesting something, and normally would is going to be used when you are offering something. So one you are receiving with could, would you are more offering. Okay, so if you're a bartender, a waitress, somebody who works in hospitality or tourism, you are probably going to be offering something more using would, whereas if you're the guest or the traveler, you are probably going to be receiving or using the word could because you're asking for a service. So, but yes, they're both polite requests, just kind of in different angles, if that makes sense. So I hope that explains that. All right. So we can always talk about those, but those are your three. Those are the rules there for when we use them. Now, I want to point out just one more pronunciation thing. If we can go to the next slide here, Franco. Yeah. So on this one, a ver, se puede usar to con los verbos después de would. No, muy buena pregunta. Victor Arturo. That's a very good question. And no, unlike irregular verbs or regular verbs, we do not use the preposition to with modal verbs, okay? So it's not I can to, I could to, I would to, I should to go. Oh, I should to go to the supermarket. No, okay? It's never going to be used with to. So to as a preposition will never be used before could, would, or should, and it will never be used after. So very, very good question. Glad you asked. Okay, hi, Teacher Jessie. One occasion I said, can I borrow your pen for a moment, please? According to this lesson, which word can I use to express the same idea in a more polite way? So the only problem with that sentence is just can, okay? Could is both the past tense and the more formal way to use the verb can to sound more polite. Because the verb can is simply referring to the ability, okay? So whenever we say, can I use a pen? That's saying, do I have the ability? Do I know how to use this pen? I don't have a pen. Here's a pen. Yeah, there's a pen. So if my question is, hey, can I use a pen? I'm asking about the ability. But if I ask my neighbor, hey, could I borrow a pen? That's a polite request to say, can I use your property? All right. So that's going to be your difference. And we can talk more in our next live class about the verb can, but it's basically the present tense of the verb could. All right. So now let's talk about some of these other contractions. So I mentioned earlier we have the negatives contractions, okay? And that's going to be the combination of the words should not, could not, and would not, which, as our negatives, become couldn't, wouldn't, and shouldn't. However, we also have some other contractions that combine the word have. All right, so again, we're talking more hypotheticals. This is where we're going to get into the conditionals and using if. Okay, if I had known, I would have gone to the party. Okay, now you're going to notice there in the graphic that it's would've. Okay, not would of. So if we notice here, we've got would've, green check mark, would of. That's not correct. All right. So this is more for a spelling and grammar lesson. If we can make that just a little bigger. There we go. So again, with should've. So you should feel a vibration because we're pronouncing the letter V. It's not should of. All right. So pay attention to the pronunciation there. Next we have could've. Could've means it was possible. No, it's not, but it's not could of. All right, and let's go to our last slide here. Sorry, that's just a slide there of your negatives and how they are correctly written. So should not, shouldn't, could not, couldn't, would not, wouldn't. All right, and then our next one. All right, so here, this is going to be the same for couldn't and wouldn't. The phrase stays the same. So if we see here, we have the positive. So as you see here, these modal verbs do not have to be complicated because there's no conjugation. You see there? It's all the same for everyone. All right, so you don't have to memorize the past tense, the present tense, the future, he, she, it, none of that. So in our positive, we have all of our pronouns, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and should go, right? If we're saying it's possible, I could go. And if we're saying maybe hypothetical, I would go, but yeah. So it's an unreal imagined situation. Next, as I mentioned before, you have those negatives. So we have I should not go or I shouldn't. Okay? Either way, you can put the two words, should not, could not, would not, or shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Both the same. Neither one is formal or informal, so don't worry. All right, next on the purple section there, you have question. And with question, you're just going to notice that just like everything else in English, the verb is going to start. So we have should I go? Very common question and really popular song. Should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go now? See? Next, you have your short answers. Really simple to use these modal verbs with a short answer to say, yeah, you should. Yes. Okay. And then you have your negatives to say, short answer, no, not a good idea. No, you should not, or no, you shouldn't. So if there's any questions, that's really all of the slides that I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'll wait just a minute more and see if anybody has any questions. While I'm waiting on your questions, I do just want to remind anybody watching this, either live or on the recorded version, that we are here on dynamicenglish.cl. We also have an Instagram account where we upload daily content to help you improve your vocabulary and your pronunciation, and of course, all with native English-speaking teachers. So we're not just this YouTube channel. We offer classes online and in person here in Santiago, Chile. So if you are interested, why not take a course with us? It's summertime, relax, improve your English, and maybe take that trip to New York or to Miami or to Orlando or to England or any place where English is spoken, and using these modal verbs to politely ask questions, you will enjoy your trip. So if there's any questions, I'm open to answer any of your questions that you might have. And if not, we will see you again back here in 2 weeks, where we will talk about the other modal verbs, which are going to be might, may, must. Okay, so this is only half of the amount of modal verbs that we really use in English. So in 2 weeks, we will be back here live on YouTube for you to answer any questions about that. But for now, I don't see any more questions. No. Shall también se usa. Yes, and Victor Arturo, we will be speaking about shall in the next live YouTube class. That's on the second part. So, yeah, good question. But yes, shall will be in 2 weeks. So be sure to tune in here, 3 p.m. in 2 weeks, and we will answer those questions. Thanks for the short videos you uploaded from time to time. I learned a lot with them. Yeah, excellent. Rome 46, thank you for watching those short videos. And that's the idea, is that you can learn something in a short amount of time, just like with our courses. So if you are interested in improving your English, make sure to check out dynamicenglish.cl and let us send you all the information about our courses. Some of our courses are only 2 months. So take the course for 2 months and then, ciao, you're ready. So enjoy and thanks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, whether you're watching live or if you are not able to and you watch this on the recorded version. Always a pleasure and thank you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again right back here in 2 weeks. So, ciao.